There's an age-old saying that goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think the Philadelphia Eagles might be thinking that heading into the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm your host, as always, Louie DiBiase. And I was thinking, with training camp going on right now down at the NovaCare complex, with a lot of the comments that Jalen Hurts has been making, seeing Saquon Barkley's workload in training camp, AJ Dillon's early involvement so far with the first team offense, I'm starting to reconsider a take that I had throughout the majority of the offseason on this podcast. And I do think, to a degree, I'm still kind of right with what I was saying about the passing game being much more involved, the volume of passing going up from 2024 to 2025. I think that still, to a degree, comparatively speaking, will be the case. Because in 2024, the Eagles ran the ball at a historic clip. They had the fewest passing attempts in football, 32nd in the NFL, and it helped them win a Super Bowl because Saquon Barkley had the best season in NFL history that a running back has ever had. So comparatively speaking, I think they are going to throw the ball more. I do think they want to keep Saquon Barkley healthy for the playoff run at the end of the year so they can really have him be the featured player of the offense when it matters most. So I think early on in the regular season, they're going to pass more. But I think this balance that I thought might come with Kevin Patullo's new offense, with Jalen Hurts' evolvement, that his evolution, I should say. I don't think evolvement is a word. I think that I totally made that up on the spot. His evolution from who he was in the regular season last year to who he was in the NFC Championship game, in the Super Bowl. I think, again, they will pass more, and they will pass better. I think the efficiency is going to be there more consistently in 2025. But I'm starting to reconsider this really dramatic shift. Like, I don't think suddenly this team's going to go from number one in the league in rushing attempts, 32nd, a 1-to-32 ratio pass to run. I don't think suddenly now it's going to be they're running it the 15th most in the NFL, and they have the 17th most passing attempts in the NFL. I don't think there's a median that we're getting back to. I think, yes, you have to adapt or die, as A.J. Brown said, and we've learned from the Eagles in 2018, 2023. If you think you're going to turn around after a Super Bowl season and do the exact same thing and it's going to work, for the most part, no, you do have to evolve to a degree. But at the same time, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. If you have an identity, don't change it just for the sake of change. And what the Eagles do, I think it's going to work again this year. Running the football is very important to the success of the NFL right now, especially the way defenses are playing to stop the deep ball. Considering the Eagles' personnel, the strength of this football team still is going to be running the football, considering they have, I think, the best offensive line in football, the best running back in football, a top 3 mobile quarterback in football. They have a great defense that they don't want to put in bad positions, giving the other team better field position by being too aggressive all the time. I think this team's going to have a lead a lot of the time, so therefore they're going to be running it a lot more. With all that being said, and looking like what's going on in training camp and how Jalen Hurts said in his press conference last week that he's not going to suddenly change his play style because he has a ring, that he played the way he thought people expected him to play, and it didn't get him a championship. And then when he started playing the way it took for the Philadelphia Eagles to win, that's when he got a ring. So him talking about that and not wavering from the Eagles' identity and seeing how much Saquon Barkley is being utilized in practice, it still looks like he is the featured player on that offense. And even AJ Dillon, I'm surprised, but AJ Dillon has been a featured part of the offense early on in the early stages of training camp, but he's been playing just as much as Will Shipley, if not more, with the first team offense. I'm starting to think they're not going to run less in 2025. They're going to run differently. And what I mean by that is, again, they still need to keep Saquon Barkley healthy. And I don't think, again, the core of my take about passing more this year is still intact. The core of that message was, hey, Saquon Barkley needs to be healthy for the playoffs. And he had a historic usage rate in 2024. It worked. It got you a title. But Saquon has an injury history. We've seen in a lot of different instances how running backs age in the NFL, how injuries definitely creep up when players have this kind of workload. The Eagles saw it themselves, how a player dropped off into DeMarco Murray from a 2014 historic usage rate in a career year to who he was with the Eagles in 2015. It wasn't close to being the same player. Like, all of that is still a fact. So I think they're going to throw more early in the year. I think they're going to run differently by using other players. I do think AJ Dillon, if he's healthy, is not going to be a Rashad Penny type of healthy scratch on this offense. I think the Eagles are excited about AJ Dillon. It's why they're using him a lot so far in training camp with the first team offense. He's actually been catching a lot of passes, which for me originally was surprising because I thought Will Shipley would have that role, and I still believe he'll catch a lot of balls this year. But I did look at some stats, and A.J. Dillon actually, despite his size and more of a physical power running style, he actually caught a good amount of balls. There were a couple different seasons that he had 20 to 30 receptions for the Green Bay Packers. So for me, I kind of look at that and think they're going to still run just as much this year, but maybe just A.J. Dillon's more involved in the backfield and Will Shipley, and maybe in certain instances, in the right moments, Jalen Hurts is used more in the running game to keep Saquon Barkley healthy. I could totally see that. And when you look at A.J. Dillon, like his production in the past, like for an RB2, it's pretty impressive. Again, this was a former second-round pick that in 2021, he had 803 rushing yards. 2022, he had 770. Even just 2 seasons ago in 2023, 613 rushing yards as the RB2 behind Aaron Jones. Like, he was in a committee, and he was a pretty solid player. They're not going to have a committee approach in the Eagles backfield. To have that kind of caliber of talent behind Saquon, yeah, I think they're going to use him a lot more than they used Kenneth Gainwell last year. I think they're going to use Will Shipley a lot more than they used Will Shipley last year. So, again, I'm not completely going off of my original take. I do think they need to pass more this year. I think they need to pass better. I think early on in the season, they should have a better run-to-pass ratio than they did last year. But the Eagles, I think, are really leaning into their identity. Like, they know they are a run-first team. They don't care what the public perception is because of that surrounding Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts does not care about that. Winning, to me, still seems to be the primary focus for the majority of this core. Winning another Super Bowl seems to be the focus. And especially late in the year, I don't think this team is suddenly going to be who they were in 2022, 2023, where they're throwing the football more than running. Like, I don't see that as a reality this year, and I think training camp is kind of showing you that. Again, you got to change things up, and you can't do the same thing every year to have the same success, but there's a balance you got to strike between that and knowing who you are, knowing what your identity is. And when you're this talented, this good at doing something, you shouldn't force the issue in an opposite direction, because just in the name of change, and because there's outside pressure for you to prove that you can be this other version of the Philadelphia Eagles, when it doesn't matter. The only version that matters is being the version that wins a Super Bowl. So it's going to be really interesting to see this year, like, what their approach is, because last year they went so far into the run-first approach, even more so than they did in 2021. Like, again, they ran the ball more than anybody in football. Like, Saquon Barkley saw a historic usage rate 95% of the season. Are they going to do that again and just say, we don't care, like, this is who we are, and we're going all in on this approach, and we're going to use a bunch of different backs and run Jalen Hurts even more and run Saquon Barkley into the ground while we have him in his prime for only probably a couple more seasons? Or are they going to throw it a little bit more with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts another year better? There's probably a middle ground between both of those extremes. I'm very curious, though. It's going to be really interesting to see what this offense approach is, because last year it worked, but there was a lot of discourse about, like, what they should be doing pass versus run. So that's going to be a curious storyline of the 2025 season. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thought about this today, because last year they did not take this approach at all. But if Howie Roseman gets back to signing guys early, if he has any in-season extensions starting now and throughout the regular season, who potentially could get paid while they're playing ball. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy this year. Me and the Locked On Eagles podcast, we're playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, get in on the action. I've been doing a league with my best friends from my neighborhood growing up since 2009. We're heading into year 16, 13 teams, 2 keepers each, a lot of new features in our league. Only Yahoo Fantasy can carry all the features that we covet. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy, they're actually dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get ready by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We've got 2 more shows for you, though, this week, and a squad show live on YouTube tomorrow starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so actually 3 more shows. Make sure you subscribed on all podcast platforms. You get the show in audio form, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You know, it's interesting. Howie Roseman in years past, like one of his MOs, one of his philosophies has always been pay a guy 1 year too early rather than pay him or lose him. It's just too late. You know, get ahead of his market value. So it's a team-friendly contract. And sometimes that bites him in the back, in the behind, if you will. You know, you look at the Carson Wentz contract. That didn't work out. Like there has been times he's been, Bryce Huff last year. He signed Bryce Huff to a big extension, maybe a year too early. Like Bryce Huff, I don't think earned, he was a really efficient pass rusher with the Jets, but getting $17 million a year, I think a lot of that was based on a projection of who Howie Roseman thought Bryce Huff would become, not who he was as a player heading into the 2024 season. So sometimes, again, it bites him in the butt, but at the same time, the majority of the time, being proactive with these contracts really helps out. It's helped out for pretty much the majority of this offense. I mean, look at Devontae Smith's contract, for instance. I think that's an absolute steal. Look at a lot of the contracts across this roster with young, proven star talent. Howie Roseman takes care of his guys early on. He is not reactive like the Dallas Cowboys are with contracts and the Cincinnati Bengals. That always tends to work out. What he has done in years past is even try to sign guys like in season before they hit the open market. If he sees like they're trending in the right direction where, hey, if they keep this up, they're going to cash in. Let's get this deal done now and save some money because his open market value, it's going to cost us a pretty penny. And so he's done that with, I go back to the 2021 season specifically. He did this with Josh Sweat. He did it with Jordan Mailata, and I think he did it with Avonte Maddox that year, right? And Dallas Goedert, I think he signed that entire class right before the start of the season. I know specifically Mailata and Sweat were right before the season opener against the Atlanta Falcons. This past year, he did not take that same approach, and he actually talked about it when I was part of the press conference down in New Orleans on Super Bowl Media Day. Somebody asked Howie about not signing a Milton Williams to a contract extension or a Josh Sweat or even a Zach Bond who was having an all-pro season at inside linebacker. And we know now the Eagles wanted to keep on, but Howie didn't take the same approach he did in years past. Why? It's because they were making a Super Bowl run. He didn't want guys getting in their heads. He wanted the focus to be about winning, even if, and he said it himself, taking this approach, I'm going to lose good players this way, but championships, banners fly forever. That's what matters, and I need these guys focused on winning now. If he would have paid Zach Bond or Josh Sweat, but not Milton Williams, or he paid Milton Williams, but, not Josh Sweat or not Mekhi Becton, some of those guys could have felt a certain way. It could have become a distraction where they're starting to think individualistically about, money. And again, winning might have not been the priority. And again, that did, I think, in the rearview mirror, in hindsight, it did probably, I don't want to say cost him these players, because I don't know if he was willing to pay even close to what the Patriots paid Milton Williams or the Cardinals paid Josh Sweat, but it definitely didn't help because their open market value was just banana land. So he took that approach. It helped, though, because they won a championship. If he, this year, zags and goes back to paying guys in season, maybe it's not even the regular season, but maybe it's during training camp. Like maybe somebody just looks really good, or it's during the preseason or right before the season opener against the Dallas Cowboys. Who could those players be? And for me, there's one guy that stands out the most. I think of all the players that could get an in-season extension before next offseason, safety Reed Blankenship is the most likely pending FA, I think, to get an in-season extension. Because Reed Blankenship, although I don't think he's like an elite starter, I think he's a good player, not great. I think you win with Reed Blankenship. You don't win because of Reed Blankenship. I think he has certain liabilities, deficiencies, I should say. He's a liability at times, I think, in like man coverage, for instance. I don't think he's the best coverage safety. I don't think he's the rangiest, most athletic, fast safety that can get sideline to sideline. But at the same time, Reed is a player that can be a 10-plus year starter for you. And there's a lot of traits that you want on the football field. If he's next to a very dynamic safety like he was last year with CJ Gardner-Johnson, or you pair him up with hopefully ascending Sidney Brown or Drew Makuba, I think, Reed Blankenship can be a solid second starting safety for you because he's a great ball hawk. I think especially like he's clutch. All of his interceptions pretty much have come from a close fourth quarter situation, right? And the vast majority of his picks the last couple years have been in that kind of situation. So he's clutch. He has just really good ball skills, really good vision and zone coverage of closing in on passing lanes. I feel like every pick he has is the exact same, where he just comes crashing downhill and he jumps a pass, diving down to the ground over the middle of the field. Like he's got really good hands. He's a good tackler. And he's a leader. Like, he's a glue guy of this defense now. Darius Slay said it himself when he was asked on a podcast during the offseason, like, hey, if you're leaving Philadelphia, you were a team captain for that defense, the youngest defense in football. You are a role model to the youngest secondary in football. Who steps up in that role? And he mentioned specifically Reed Blankenship. And we know the close relationship that he has with, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. Like, this is a guy that Howie Roseman wants in the building. He already gave him a 1-year extension last year, so he didn't hit the open market after the 2024 season. Well, Reed's a pending FA next year. And because CJ Gardner-Johnson is gone, you already have question marks at safety about, two young promising players, but we don't know who Drew Makuba is going to be. We don't know if Sidney Brown is going to work out. We have high hopes for them, but do you really want to head into the 2026 season potentially with potentially, I'm not predicting, there might be zero questions at safety, but do you want two gaping holes at what I think is an important position, even if the Eagles have taken years off at this spot with investing any sort of significant resources? Like, I'm not so sure. I think Reed Blankenship, again, I don't think he's a top 10 safety in football, but I think he's always going to be a, top 16, top 20 guy. And I think he's a plus starter. And I don't think he's going to cost that much because of that. I don't think Reed Blankenship is going to break the bank. I don't think he's going to reset the safety market. So I'm all for an extension. Again, he's not like my favorite style of safety, but I think he fits in this Vic Fangio defense very well. And there's a lot of good things about him. And you can at least rely on the fact that he's going to be a sound tackler and he's going to get you 3 to 4 clutch interceptions a year. And I'll take that for what he makes. He's, I think, very underpaid, and I think even with his next extension, it's going to be underpaid. Like, I think it's going to be not under market value, but, like, again, he is not getting a Derwin James level extension. He's not getting what, Marcus Williams got on the open market in 2022. Like, he's not going to get that kind of deal the Eagles were willing to give a Marcus Williams. So I think Reed Blankenship has the best chance to get this kind of in-season, before next offseason kind of extension. Anybody else? I think maybe Jordan Davis. Again, this would be kind of paying him based on what you think he'll become rather than who he is right now. He'll likely be seen as an overpay, or maybe not an overpay, but the extension will be seen as premature, at least from who he is right now. But maybe, again, you think Jordan Davis is going to take that step this year as a pass rusher. He is conditioned, and even if he's not a 5 to 10 sack a year guy, he's going to have 3 to 4. He's going to be an elite 2-down run stopper. And that's going to cost, even that role is going to cost a lot of money on the open market. You've got time because you picked up the 5th-year option, but maybe they say, hey, if we pay Jordan Davis now, it might seem like kind of like a little bit of an overpay right now for who he is, but in 3 to 4 months, it might look like an absolute steal. Would Jordan Davis want to do this? I would say no. If I was Jordan Davis, I would. That's why I think Reed Blankenship would be willing to sign an extension right now. Jordan Davis, I think, because of his position, because of the money that is going to defensive tackles, especially guys that can pass rush, if he can figure out the pass rushing side, a guy of that size that's this good against the run, he's going to get a bag. He's going to get a big bag in the open market. So I don't know if I would predict Reed Blankenship because I don't think JD would accept this kind of contract already for what the Eagles would want to pay him. But I could see Howie Roseman's mindset kind of go there. Like, hey, maybe we get a deal done with JD now. We know that we'll at least get a really elite run stopper for the future, even if that's an overpay for what that role is. It is an important role to have on defense, and let's get it done now. Considering, again, we got to pay Jalen Carter eventually $35+ million a year. We might have to pay Moro Ojoma eventually. Let's get this team-friendly Jordan Davis deal in now. So I would predict it's more Reed Blankenship, but I could also see Jordan Davis. I don't think anybody else, like Nakobe Dean, no. They just paid a linebacker and just drafted a linebacker in the first round. I don't see that happening. They just made Dallas Goedert take a pay cut. Jahan Dotson, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. I can't foresee that either. If I'm Dotson, I'm not doing that anyway. I mean, I think you're at your lowest value right now. So I think it's Reed Blankenship or maybe Jordan Davis. But I would predict it's Blankenship, and I could see that deal getting done before the regular season. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, speaking of Howie Roseman getting busy this summer, I'm starting to feel like the Eagles need to add another pass catcher, whether it's a receiver or a tight end. I'll tell you why. Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. I love a transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, that's me. I don't hit birdies. I play, double bogey golf, but it's fun golf. I like to make memories with my friends. This one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I have 2 full-time jobs with the podcast and another job as well. Got friends, a relationship. I play football in a league on weekends. Like, I'm going and going all the time. I get up really early. 5 Hour Energy has really kind of saved me. And especially early on, I like to play golf early in the mornings. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF in all capital letters to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. All right, we are wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. One thing I'm not loving hearing from beat reporters so far at Eagles training camp, but again, it's so early on. The first preseason game hasn't even been played. We've only had 1 or 2 padded practices so far. But one thing early on that I'm not at a conclusion yet, but I'm starting to feel this way. I think the Eagles need to add another pass catcher. I think they need to add a receiver or a tight end. And yes, you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. You've got, Jahan Dotson, who I think is going to be really a lot better in year 2 with this offense, with chemistry going with Jalen Hurts. This is a former top 20 pick in the first round. Like, I think the fact that he's your 5th option in this offense is just ridiculous. Just an abundance of riches. It's a luxury to have what the Eagles have at their skill position groups. But I'm thinking more from a depth chart perspective, from the depth of the 4th receiver down, the 2nd tight end down. Outside of Grant Calcaterra, I don't feel great about either spot. I don't think the Eagles even have 5 to 6 good receivers worth keeping on this 53-man roster. And I like Grant Calcaterra, but I kind of wanted them to upgrade at tight end 2 this year, and they didn't. I don't love Harrison Bryant or Kylan Granson as your third player or somebody that pushes Calcaterra as that second guy. Maybe as the summer progresses, we'll see. But they cut Danny Gray, who I kind of liked. They got rid of Danny Gray at wide receiver. Terrace Marshall Jr. got hurt yesterday. I like Terrace Marshall Jr., but is he a fourth receiver on this roster? I'm not so sure. Johnny Wilson, I just don't think he can catch. And considering he's 6'6", and I don't think will ever be an elite separator, if catching is a weakness of yours, that's a problem. So I'm kind of cooling on the Johnny Wilson hype that I was on last year. Anais Smith, I've barely heard anything about so far this offseason. I just, again, they have such good talent up front at wide receiver and at tight end, but they're like one or two injuries away from needing somebody that's a viable, proven pass catcher. And when you look out on the open market, there's actually some interesting veterans that I would like to bring in. Now, I'm thinking of this through an Eagles, a team perspective. I don't know if any of these guys would want to come into an offense that has so many target monsters up front in front of them, but maybe there is some veteran that's looking to ring chase, and because there's so many options still in the open market, they all can't sign with, there's a reason they're not signed already. They can't all sign with teams that are going to give them a legitimate workload in an offense. So I could see somebody saying, hey, I'll be the fourth receiver in Philadelphia. I'll ring chase and I'll rotate sometimes with Jahan Dotson. Like if I'm a Tyler Boyd, I would do that. He's actually one of the top three guys that I would sign. Of all the pass catchers available in the open market right now, if I had to sign three guys, my three favorite options are someone that just got released by the Seahawks, Noah Fant, who's been he's been meeting after his release with different teams. I think he is probably my favorite option as a tight end that consistently gets, 500 to 600 yards a year. Really good run after the catch, explosive tight end that I like better in the passing game in 12 personnel than I do Grant Calcaterra. Tyler Boyd, again, like I said, a veteran slot receiver that I think could take advantage and rotate in with Jahan Dotson. Again, Boyd had a really down year in Tennessee last year and looked kind of shot, but he is only 30 years old, and as your 3B kind of receiver, I think he'd be an upgrade even over what you had in Julio Jones a couple years ago. And then even a Gabe Davis, who we always use him as the comparison to Saquon Barkley's contract last year to show what a steal Saquon's deal was, because it was around the same average per year money that Gabe Davis got in Jacksonville. But, for a veteran minimum contract, Gabe Davis has some good downfield speed. He was a really good deep threat in Buffalo. Again, I would like to have a deep threat on this depth chart behind your top three. As a fourth or fifth guy, maybe Gabe Davis signs on with Philadelphia. Those would be my three favorite options for Philly, is Noah Fant, Gabe Davis, Tyler Boyd. I'd rather have Boyd than Davis, but those are my top three. But even if it's not one of those three guys, it would be hilarious because the Titans basically traded A.J. Brown to draft this player, but Treylon Burks just got waived. This is a former first-round pick that has size that I think is going to be a better separator than a Johnny Wilson. It would be hilarious for Howie Roseman to bring in Treylon Burks, but he's an interesting option, and Howie loves bringing in former first, second-round picks, so that signing would make all the sense in the world. Even I know people are going to roll their eyes at this, but a reunion with Nelson Aguilar, I don't hate that. Again, a veteran fourth or fifth guy. I don't know. I don't love the idea of Johnny Wilson and Terrace Marshall Jr. or, Avery Williams or Anais Smith being your fourth and fifth guy in the depth chart. I don't really love that. So I would consider one of these moves. My favorite one, though, is what I said last week on the show. If the Saints are just awful before the trade deadline, there's only 1 year left on his deal. Rashid Shaheed, if they're going to add a pass catcher this year, that's my ultimate idea. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not loving the depth chart right now at receiver or tight end, and I would personally love to bring, somebody in. I don't know if there's even any other names that I'm forgetting. I don't think Amari Cooper would sign in Philadelphia. I think he could have a bigger role somewhere else. Odell Beckham Jr., kind of the same thing. Keenan Allen's out there, but I think Keenan Allen would want a bigger role. But again, somebody like, Treylon Burks, Tyler Boyd, Nelson Aguilar, Gabe Davis, Noah Fant. Noah Fant at tight end, I think, is actually my favorite option of all these. Somebody like that, I think they need to bring in more competition. I'm not loving what they have so far, but we'll see. Again, a lot of time still for these guys to earn a job in training camp, the preseason coming up as well. So we'll see how this transpires, how this battle continues to wage on. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. 3 more shows for you this week, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube and all podcast platforms. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.